Alice was the agency committee. It was like to all the human service agencies that were, involved.
Hello?
It was, that was the 92. Yeah, that was October. I think I wasn't part of it because I was a volunteer secretary.
I can remember one of the first meetings we met in the summertime. And we met at, I remember we met at the city office.
And see, I served as the volunteer secretary for about 1996.
You did really well. You did a nice one.
But
Oh, good.
oh, so we got here and got his he was assistant bishop. He's come over here. Yeah. We're all.
Oh. Welcome to Church of Our Savior. I'm Steve. I'm the pastor, priest, minister, whatever you want to call it. So I have the privilege of working with an amazing group of people here in North Platte. So welcome, one and all. We're grateful to have you. We're going to start with a brief bit of prayer. Lord of life, thank you for the ways that you have created us to be in community, and for your constant reminders to listen to and love and serve one another as much as of ourselves. We want to take care of ourselves. Thank you for the constancy of your loving presence in the midst of an ever-changing world. We ask your blessing on this time together so that we listen and learn well and can be all people you've called us to be for this time and place. So we're really glad to have you here for this time. This is the ground rules part of of the start. We're here today to listen and learn from our neighbors. We've got folks who have experience with something new happening in their community. And we're going on that journey too. So since North Platte gets to host a packing plant and welcome a good number of new neighbors, we're here to listen and learn from those who've been down the road ahead of us. We're not here to debate the packing plant, because that decision's been made and we're going forward. We are here to listen to our panel members share their learnings and insights and stories. Our panelists come to us with experience in a variety of aspects of community life, and they'll each have an opportunity to respond to 4 open-ended questions that will help us learn how to be successful here in North Platte at welcoming new neighbors and new workers. After the panel discussion, you're all invited to the fireside room just on that side of the wall for refreshments, and that'll be the chance to ask any questions that you have of the panel members is during refreshment time. Because we're here to listen and learn, we're going to, as always, keep our comments and questions respectful at all times. So on behalf of Church of Our Savior, welcome to this time of listening and learning for the sake of our being a city that successfully welcomes new members and new workers and a big new business. The other housekeeping detail is, if you're looking for a restroom, you can head out this door or the one in the back, and they're on that side of the wall, the big hallway. Welcome. Chris.
We want to thank you again for coming today. My name is Chris Guerra, and I am a committee member of, we have a Thrive committee, and part of our duty was to figure out some things that we can do that will help the community. So that's kind of what prompted us to have this panel. And I had the privilege of growing up in Lexington. So even though I am extremely grown up, I still have some contacts there. So I made a lot of phone calls. These are the wonderful people that absolutely from the very beginning said, I'll be there, I'll help however I can. So we are so thankful for them to come. I'd like to tell you a little bit about each one of these people. Some of the information that I have anyway, and they might want to add to that information. So we'll start with Jackie Berkey, they're down at the other end. She is the executive director of the Lexington Community Foundation, which is Lexington's source for charitable giving. Actually, Jackie has been with the committee for 25 years. Almost 26, and she's going to be retiring. She attended Doane, and she's also a graduate of UNO. She lived in Colorado before moving to Lexington. During her time with the foundation, Jackie, with the board of directors, charted the course of the growing foundation to ensure its success and continued permanence within the community. In the height of the pandemic, Jackie was instrumental in securing food relief for Lexington and area communities, organizing volunteers and businesses that supplied food and meals to thousands of community members, and helped secure grant funding for residents to assist them in getting back on their feet. Big job. Anything else you'd like to add, Jackie? Okay. Absolutely, thank you for being here. You will notice that you all have microphones kind of in front of you. I'm not sure that they are turned on, so when we start asking the question, okay, great. Okay, and next to Jackie is Audrey Downey. Audrey Downey considers herself a lifelong resident of Lexington. Her 4 children were raised in Lexington, and they all graduated from Lexington High School. Woohoo, Minutemen. She has been involved in education for 42 years. I promised that I wouldn't have orange and black pom-poms for tea. So, She has taught special education, kindergarten, and was the first ELL teacher for Lexington Public Schools before becoming an administrator. First in an elementary building before being transferred to the high school, initially as the assistant principal in charge of discipline, yay, and then becoming the principal for the last 3 years. And she's retiring as well, right? All right. She served on the initial committee that met and planned upon the announcement that Tyson/IBP would be coming to town. Audrey. And then we have, next to her, we have Jerry Bergstrom. And Jerry and Mary are man and wife. And we go way back. We go back to college, which was a couple years ago. Yeah. Spent a lot of time at Dickie Dugan's Dance Hall in Kearney. Yeah. And yes, and Mary and I were roommates. So do not ask her any questions about me because I bribed her not to answer questions. Okay. Jerry was originally from Myrna, Nebraska, graduate of Kearney State College, and retired after a 36-year education, career in education. He was a guidance counselor in Amherst and Overton for 13 years. And in Lexington, he was principal at Pershing Elementary for the remainder of his educational career. He was the 2007 recipient of the Nicholas Milecki Award for Promoting Social Justice and the 2008 Nebraska Elementary Principal of the Year. That's big stuff, guys. Just telling you, that's big stuff. After retiring as a principal in 2011, he served part-time as a truancy hearing officer for Lexington Public Schools for 8 years. So now we'll talk about Mary. Mary was raised on a small farm near Bertrand, Nebraska, and was a graduate of Kearney State College, go Lopers. Worked 10 years for Sperry New Holland in Lexington. She stayed home for 13 years while she was raising her family. She has volunteered in a variety of church and community organizations. And she was a 20-year board member for the Lexington Outreach Ministry, the Welcome Center, and its predecessors. And she also worked at the Lexington High School as librarian for 20 years, correct? Mary and Jerry live at Johnson Lake. They raised 2 wonderful children who proudly graduated from Lexington. And they just had their first grandchild born in July of 2022. So thank you. And then, last but not least, we have Maria Reyes. Maria was born and raised in Mexico. She graduated from an American college in Chihuahua, Mexico, as an executive bilingual secretary with a minor in private accounting. For the last 39 years, Maria has lived in the United States. She lived in California for 13 years before moving to Nebraska, where she has been for the last 26 years. She has taken many courses and training, including palliative care, diabetes education empowerment program, mental health first aid USA, QPR suicide prevention gatekeeper instructor certification, medical interpreting, and she is currently is a community health worker at Lexington Hospital. Maria can read and write in both English and Spanish. Maria and her husband raised their 3 children in Lexington, and her grandchildren are now also going through the Lexington school system. Maria is currently working as a community health worker. In 2021, Maria was awarded the Community Health Worker Making a Difference Award for her commitment and service to the Lexington community. We have a great panel. Okay, so now on to the questions that our panel members are going to share. And the thing that we want you to remember is we want this to be very informal. We'll ask each of you the individual questions, but if something sparks you, makes you think of something else, please make sure that you can carry on the conversation. So, Okay, so Jackie, we'll start with you. Question number 1. How did Lexington become the thriving multicultural town with a packing plant that it is today?
Well, I will admit that the beginning stages of the transformation of Lexington was not something that I was a part of. My husband, Mitch, graduated from Lexington. We had raised our kids in Denver, Colorado, and decided to come back to Lexington in 1992. So at that point, when we came back, there were a lot of things that were happening in Lexington, unexpected challenges with the plant and the populations that were coming in at that time. So I came in and I was kind of caught in the middle of that. I think what had to happen, and at that time I was a stay-at-home mom, several years later started my position at the Lexington Community Foundation. What I could see needed to happen was a change of attitude. We were there to stay. We needed to make Lexington be all that it could be for those of us that call it home. And so there was a process, and it took several years to have that kind of attitude change. People kept saying, oh, we're not going to be the Lexington that we used to be, or our football team probably will never be state champions, which it hasn't been. But, but really, who cares? More about what programs do we need to implement and what groups need to come together. As I was talking with Chris, she was asking me who else could maybe be on this panel. The Lex Foundation works with all services and all aspects of community, so it is very rewarding, and I would challenge your community foundation to embrace that too. But it's really important to get the perspective from all aspects of your community: healthcare, education, the business district, law enforcement. You know, just every aspect should have some input in the direction that it's going, and embrace it. Really, all 4 of my kids graduated from Lexington and are thriving, and they don't see diversity like the kids in a lot of the schools might. They grew up around it. It's just the way of life for them, and I think they're actually feeling like they're almost privileged because they got to see the different backgrounds and got to interact with those kinds of people. So,
Becky, could you hold the,
a little bit
all
closer.
of you hold it?
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
I think
that
some of
sounds
them,
so
that's okay.
loud.
I think some of them are having a little hard time
Can you hear me
hearing.
okay? Sorry. Okay, Audrey's up.
Well, what I would say is, from where we are right now compared to where we started, I truly believe that diversity is our strength in our community. When we started out, it was a challenge. We did not know what to expect. We did not know what was coming, and so it was just, okay. But I feel like one of the strengths our community had was, yeah, there were concerns, there were questions, but it was more, okay, what can we do to make this a better community? And you know, it didn't just happen day one, that first year. We learned from everyone. But I just, you know, I'm sitting here now, and I love the diversity we have. If you would come into our school, you will see we have a flag from every country that's represented, because it wasn't just people coming from Mexico. We have gotten people from all over the world. And I think probably the biggest thing is the community. We came together, and it was like, okay, it's here. What are we going to do? How can we embrace it? How do we handle the issues? Because there are issues, and there were, and there will continue to be. But I think so much of it is, it's an attitude, it's a mindset that you take on to, you know, I say we're all in this together. How can we make this work?
Well, it's wonderful to see so many people here. You need to applaud yourselves for taking the time to learn. I was a school principal in Lexington when the beef packing plant came. Prior to that, I had been in smaller school districts in Overton and Amherst as a school counselor. But I want to look back on the beginning. Really, we are able to be what we are today because of the people in Lexington, the leadership in Lexington, city council members, police officers, just the common everyday people that do the work really welcomed the opportunity to host a beef packing plant. And it's still, to me, the strength. Jackie Berkey. It's amazing the people that we have in our community who've stayed. We had a lot of white flight, but the people that stayed have been totally committed to making Lexington work, and it works very well, from the police chief to the superintendent of schools to the mayor. We have a wonderful mayor, and they've done so much. The city management have done so much to create an environment where people coming from other parts of the world, and like Audrey said, they're literally from all parts of the world, not just Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua. They're from everywhere. You walk in, how many flags are there?
Well,
Is
we
it 40 some now?
added 4 new countries
Oh,
this
really?
year.
Really? So 40 some countries are represented in the people in Lexington. The Latino families have been wonderful to work with, as have others. Latino families still represent the majority of our multicultural students. But when the plant first opened, it was a little different. Any new business that starts is going to hire a lot of young men, and a lot of these young men weren't married, and so they were up to no good. They thought they were up to having a good time, but gradually that has changed, and we get almost all of our employees now come from families, I think. Yeah. I haven't been there for 12 years, so 12 years is a long time. But initially, a lot of the young men would get in trouble, and our police chief at the time was so gracious dealing with these people, with these men that would get carried away now and then. But as that changed, as we got more and more families, they're all there just to have a better life, just like I'm here to have a better life. So the multicultural change has been really interesting in Lexington. And I'm sure some of you have probably been there at ball games or something, and you've noticed it doesn't look like other schools. Although North Platte's always had a fairly large Latino population. So you probably have a leg up on where we were when we began. We had 3% minorities when I started in Lexington. And they had been so entrenched and there so long, nobody knew that they were minorities. And they were mostly men and families from Mexico, but only 3%. So it's been a tremendous change, and now the minority population in Lexington in the schools is over 90%.
Well, I made a few notes, and since I'm a retired school librarian, I made a 3-ring notebook that I'm going to give to Chris. Because over the introduction you heard, I served in a variety of volunteer opportunities. Even closer. Oh my gosh. So I must have kept everything, because Chris had called me in January, and we were in Florida at the time, and I said, well, I'm going to have to think about this. I've been retired for 3 years, and it's been a while since I served in that capacity on volunteer within the community. And so, but it was fun to go back and go through those notes. So what Audrey alluded to, the Methodist Church, I think, led the charge. Pastor Ernst at the time and a lady named Barb Vondras got together a group of people to put together what we called the Interagency Council. And this was the human service agencies in Lexington, but also in the county. And as it came together, what it was, and they met twice a month on the first and third Friday, something like that, for a brown bag. And so at the time, I had been an employee at Sperry New Holland. So I went through that transition, learning the plant was closing, and I was one of the last 100 staff members that helped close down the plant in March of 1986. And so in that time frame, and I'm not sure when IBP bought it, it might have been 88, 89, but because these conversations began with the city leadership about Garden City, where should we go, who can we talk to that help prepare us for this change? And you have to understand that Lexington was a community of 7,000-ish, I think. And the plant, the New Holland plant closed, at one time at a peak of 900 people had been employed. So this was a tremendous impact. In fact, it was really interesting. My cousin sent me an article from Nebraska History that went back and it outlined how the plant coming to Lexington has changed the landscape of Nebraska as far as our minority populations coming to this part of the world. And it was really interesting. You read that, it's kind of bleak about what happened after New Holland left. There were 26 empty storefronts downtown. 900 people were gone because employment wasn't there. So this was before IBP even announced they were coming. So the community was struggling, and it was in the midst of the farm crisis. So it was a challenge right there. And so then you get IBP that buys the New Holland plant, and I found the article, and I thought, invested $71 million converting this combine plant to a meat packing plant. So a huge investment. And then initially they were going to employ 1,200 to 1,300 people. So imagine the impact on the infrastructure of a town that size. Housing, school, medical, I mean, everything you could name. I mean, it's staggering when you think about it. Now, North Platte, your community of what, 24,000? And I'm not sure what this plant will employ, 500, 800 people. So you have that ability to absorb that maybe a little bit better. So this was really a huge shockwave. And so as I think about it, what Barb did and Pastor Ernst and other leadership was collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Talk to one another. You want to be sure that your human service agencies are not duplicating services. So that was the purpose of this meeting, to come together to say, this is what we're doing. This is the initiative that we have. These are the services that we offered. Put together that all in a brochure so people know who to call. And so that kind of thing, I think that really helped ease the way. And so since I had been a part of New Holland, I mean, I knew what the plant used to look like and who the people used to be that were employed there. And we were staying in the community. Jerry worked in Overton, and by that time had taken the job in Lexington. We lived at Johnson Lake because we're water people and sailing people and whatever. It didn't have anything to do with the complexion of the community at all. But we knew what was coming, and we were going to stay. And so I said, well, I don't want to find out what's going on in the coffee shop. So for some reason, I was able to connect with Barb. I don't know how it happened. But I said, is there a way that I can serve? And she said, well, you want to come to meetings and take notes? So I can do that. So I went to the interagency meetings probably through 1996, not 2 meetings every month probably, but I still have a lot of those notes. I'm going back and read, and I put some. And what that initial meeting was, pulling that together, the powers that be, to create this interagency. And so that, I think, was a huge piece. Community leadership, medical people, educators went to other communities to say, how can we prepare for this? We didn't do everything right. We made a lot of mistakes along the way. And hopefully you can learn from our mistakes. So I think, as I look at it, you know, in the role that I could have as a mom, volunteering, knowing my kids were going to be in this community, be in this school, how can we make this a better place? And so that collaboration, I think it's curiosity, kindness, compassion, and collaboration.
Well, I don't know if I consider myself a newcomer, all-comer, but before in Lexington, they will go, are you from the Reyes, from the all-comers or newcomers? but I had been in Lexington for 31 years. I moved from California. When I told my boss in California that I was moving to Nebraska, she blessed me. Yeah. She said, I wish you the best because it's not the best state. So I didn't know. But I enjoy Nebraska. Nebraska is home for us. You know, I have lived most of my years in my life in Nebraska, even longer than what I have lived in Mexico. When I arrived, it was 1992. I remember it was April 13, 1992. It was cold. But I'm from Chihuahua. It's very cold. It's similar to Nebraska. We have the best cattle of Mexico too, since Nebraska does too. But I remember myself, I got involved right away at church. I did a lot with Jackie. We did a lot of religious ed. The first time that I walked in there was a lady, her name was Sarah, and she said, you are here to help us, not to be helped. So right away I started to help at church, and I started to get myself involved in the community. A lot of people said they don't like us, a lot of the Latinos, but I think it was that they didn't like us was the barrier of the language. Sometimes, you know, a smile can open doors instead of, oh, they don't understand us. I became a United States citizen here in Nebraska. I don't know why I didn't do it in California because I've been documented since 1980. But when I arrived to Nebraska, I felt that something was different. I went to the library and asked, how can I have access to everything to become a citizen of the United States? And they told me, come back in a week and we will have the information. They didn't know what to do. They didn't have any information. Everything was new to them. So I became, American citizen here in Nebraska. And, but I started to get myself involved right away. My kids, my oldest was 3 years old, so she started kinder. I still remember the principal from Bryan. She called me one day and she said, Maria, come. So I went and she said, I didn't know what to do last night. And I said, why? She said, I was invited to a house, but they didn't give me any silverware. I didn't know what to eat, but I looked and they were eating just with a tortilla. I said, that's our silverware. So, but they were ready to integrate with the community. The teachers went to the homes, the priests went to the homes. So, you know, it was like, it takes a village to raise a child, so I think we had been together raising kids. I'm very proud of my kids. My 3 kids went to Lexington School. They went to UNK. They graduate, and they come back to continue working in Lexington. You will see a lot of families now, you know, Anglos with Latinos or vice versa, you know, marriage. My daughter just got married too. We had a different culture now, interculture. But it's good. It's for the positive stuff. And I think that's what we need to see. There is a growth of the community, but it's really enrichment too. It's not, I think that first of all, it's like you get kind of nervous, but there's people ready there to help you. I remember Mr. Burston taking people to, we went to, I think, UNL or someplace in Lincoln for taking kids to leadership and some adults. So, it's, you know, just to teach us or to let us know how can we help in the community. But different churches can help too, because I think that's what happened in Lexington. You know, I'm very Catholic, but still I go to any church without any problem. I can do whatever, and I think if the pastors get together, we have ministerial association, that helps a lot, because they get together and they help the whole community. Mm-hmm. And the Innovations is a very good program. I think even you can do it by Zoom if any of you is interested on, because we meet, we just had it last Friday, the first and the third Friday of the month. And it's when all the different agencies get together.
Still doing it.
Mm-hmm. And we've been doing part of that by Zooming. So, you know, anyone can be welcome, and maybe you can hear some of the stuff. So.
Can I just spurred a thought when she said ministerial association. I don't know if you have that here. Okay, and so what I remember early on, there were people needing a lot of assistance, and they would go to you know, and some people are not on the upside, but that's how it is. But you help. And so they would go from church to church. And so the ministerial.
Trying.
Hello?
Do you want this one?
Okay.
This one's
All right, this one's live. So the Ministerial Association collaborated and worked it out so that there was one number to call instead of people trying to go from church to church to church. So that was one part of our learning curve. So.
So now we'll ask you, tell us about a particular challenge your organization or community overcame. How did you do it?
Well, you've heard a lot of some of the early challenges from the panel, and from the Community Foundation standpoint, I think it was communication. How do we reach out to the different cultures and understand them? That is a huge learning curve for them, as well as the people that have been in the community for a long time, is that understanding and being able to see what is needed and how to address those needs. It takes some time and some collaboration. You need to work with the other agencies. You need to work with the schools, the municipality, the leadership. What are the issues? And for the Lexington Community Foundation, our mission is very broad, and we're not just education, we're not just healthcare. We work with the faith community, leadership, all of the agencies, and try to grasp what it is that we could do to make things better for everybody that called Lexington home. It is a huge task. I think North Platte, as you're doing the right things as you start to prepare and think about what it could be here. I think the more that you communicate with each other, the better it's going to be, and try to anticipate the direction that some of these issues might go, and be prepared for that. But for us, is the communication part and the understanding of what the refugees and the immigrants were going through, so that we could get them acclimated and into the system and make them feel like they're welcome in Lexington. Well, we went to a lot of meetings, and we just had lots of roundtable discussions and conversation, and I think having a resource directory, an interagency council, ministerial association, having the right people around the table so there's a continuum of progress as you go from 1 month to another, to 1 year to another. It's fantastic right now to see, now after decades, that some of our professionals and our leaders that chose to come home and call Lexington home are ones that were born in Lexington as some of the new families that came. They love it there. But I'm going to tell you too, a lot of that same population are our kids. They still choose to come home to Lexington and be the physical therapists and the lawyers and the bankers and the teachers there. So that inclusion is a attitude that needs to be from the beginning. It's very positive. I think Lexington is better off because of the decisions they made in 80s and 90s to bring the plant in. Economically, I don't know where we'd be otherwise. Ag is our main economic provider, I guess, in the area, but the plant definitely has given us another dynamic to that. Oh, yeah, and she wants me to mention Give Big. There was one big thing. The Giving Days in Nebraska, and I know I've worked with Eric Seacrest here in North Platte as part of your community foundation. Lexington Community Foundation started the Giving Day activity in the state of Nebraska. And we modeled it after Minnesota, which did a statewide one. And we had so many agencies that did a great service for Lexington, but I felt like the greater community didn't have a good awareness of what was happening and what the needs were. So I presented it to my board of directors to do the Giving Day, put up some match grant money, and beyond the money raised, to me, the bigger success of Give Big Lexington was the awareness. Each of these agencies could say what they do with the money if it was raised, or what they had done in the past, and what their goals were for the future. We made the participation level very small, $5. You can give to any agency for $5 and support that. And the message always was that all the pieces coming together make it big and make it an incredible impact. I presented that to my board as a 3-year initiative, and we just completed year 12. So it's not going away. The impact has been incredible. The inclusion of all areas of our demographic areas of our community is incredible. A quick story. We were working with the men's soccer league, who wanted outdoor and indoor soccer complexes, and the city was doing really a fine job saying, okay, you guys have to contribute to this and you're going to be part of the plan. We put the Lexington Field House on the Giving Day, and they had the donation sheets, and $5 was the minimum. At the end of the day, Ricardo comes in and he has a paper box filled with donation forms with $5 clipped to all of them. Literally hundreds of pages. I was like, oh, good job, Ricardo. He was so proud. I don't even know what it totaled, but they did get their field house. They were just so inspired by being part of the community and being welcomed, and they could relate to the soccer project. So that was probably my first time that I was like really proud and embraced working with those groups, and really could see that they wanted Lexington to be their home.
Well, from the school standpoint, when I became the district's first ELL teacher, everybody was like, well, what's an ELL teacher? Because back then, there was no such endorsement. So it was kind of like, fly by the seat of your pants. So I went to the State Department, met with some people down there, and they said, you know, you get to build the program you want. And that was exciting, but it was just, you know, I went and met with them during the summer months, and then we were anticipating, you know, these kids showing up, you know, right when school started in August, and then it's like, it's September, it's October, and it's like, where are the kids? They're not here yet. Because initially Tyson or IBP, it was just the single men came first, and their families came later. And so finally, my first family showed up. I got 3 kids, the Saleas family. I could still, Hugo, Maria, Jose, I was so excited. You know, I got kids. And I can remember they told us, you will probably only need 1 ELL teacher for your district. Well, at this time now, I'm at the high school, at the principal, we have 5 ELL teachers in our building. We're building about 950, and 1/4 of our students are ELL students. So one of the teachers in my building, he joked, he said, there's a sign at the border that says, Rochek's classroom or bust. You know, we got to get there. They got there. But probably one of the biggest challenges then when we started to get students was the language barrier. And so we hired 1 ELL para who spoke Spanish. And just, you know, once they started coming, we kept getting more and more students, just having space for them and making sure their needs, their educational needs were met, because just because they spoke Spanish didn't mean they can't go in that 4th grade classroom and do 4th grade math. And so a lot of our kids, when we started to integrate them into the regular classroom, we started it with math, because that was that basic language. But I was so blessed and so fortunate, because it was important for me to get to know those families. I knew the kids, and so getting into their homes, getting to know what they came from. I can remember doing home visits before school started, because I got to see what those kids were coming to me You know, I understood some of that. But then also by doing that, you became those parents' friend. They trusted you. They came to you for help. And that was probably the biggest thing, you know, how do we get them hooked up with a plumber or, you know, somebody, their gas stove. I remember a family down the street, the stove wouldn't work. So I got somebody's husband, come over here, help me. But just helping them get situated, getting to know the people in our community. So I felt like I was not only a teacher, I was a social worker, and then just the numbers. The students just kept coming, and how we as a district, yeah, they're still coming. I mean, they're still, you know, just, I don't think we were fully prepared. Jerry, you know that too, just for the number of kids.
We certainly were not prepared.
I think the communication thing was a big misconception too. Correct me if I was wrong. We tried to do everything and translate it into Spanish and have materials in Spanish and English, thinking everyone would be able to read and understand that, and that was not the case. So there was a huge learning curve. You know, we were thinking we were prepared, but we weren't really on track.
Yeah, thank you. Audrey broke the ground in Lexington for for ELL language. I was at Pershing Elementary, she was at Morton, and all of our students at first, for the first 4 years, all of them went to Morton Elementary, all of our students who were English language learners. And Audrey she started the whole thing. Eventually, we began to get students at Pershing, and I hired an ELL teacher. It was, as I look back, I think of ELL instruction was kind of like a country school. I mean, you had kindergartners, first graders, second graders, third graders, fourth graders. I mean, you had them all, right, Audrey? And that's the way it was at Pershing. One of the biggest barriers is language. I mean, imagine these children coming, and most of them were not literate in Spanish. They did not read Spanish. Some of the older students did, and that's a tremendous advantage to be literate in your native language before you learn a second language. But most of our students were not. So recognizing that, I started a program at Pershing called Together for Children. And it was kindergarten and first grade teachers meeting with parents twice a month, and with an interpreter, obviously, since none of my teachers spoke Spanish. But with the interpreter, they would meet with parents and talk about how parents could help provide the kind of environment their children would need to be successful in an American school. This program was really started in another community in Minnesota, as a lot of good programs were started in Minnesota. But Together for Children was very successful in my building, and parents would come and they would simply learn about what their children are learning and how they could set an environment at home so that their children could be successful. Remember, I don't think hardly any of these parents spoke English at all. So you're asking them to come and help their children learn in English when they don't speak English. But we would talk to them about how you can simply talk to them in your native language about the pictures that they're seeing in their reading books. Anything you can do to build language, even if it's not in English, is going to be helpful for that transfer to English. So that was a program that I felt really good about, and our teachers felt good about.
Something else I'm going to interject as he talked about that, not understanding the language. Many of our parents that came were not legal. And we still have that today. And that was probably their biggest fear when they would sometimes come to the school. They were afraid that, oh, if they find out I'm not legal. And it's like, that doesn't matter to us. We are here to educate your child, and in turn to help you become educated as well.
Exactly. you know, as I recognize the problems of language, and it's a problem yet today, it's a huge problem. One of the biggest challenges I think our staff had to overcome, we were a very high-performing school prior to the influx of immigrants. Our school would score in the 90-plus percentile on national achievement tests every year. That changed when you have children who don't speak the language and who've had very little exposure to, you know, an American culture. It was a big challenge and very difficult for some of our teachers who had experienced for a long time, you know, great success. So part of that was teaching parents how they could provide the kind of support that we all provided our own children. You know, how can you make sure your children are ready for school? How can you make sure that they're ready to learn? Talking to them, taking them to the library, just, you know, spending time with them. Now, and that's easy for me to say, for us to say. We're white, we grew up in America, we grew up in Nebraska, we know the language, we know where to access services. A lot of these people had no clue, you know, where to access services. And that's where the Interagency Council and Jackie have come in to really provide a lot of support. But language was a major challenge to overcome. And so about the mid-1990s, a principal at Morton and I were asked to go to California to look at dual language programs or ELL programs that were successful. So we spent a week in Southern California. And I can remember distinctly the program that stood out the most to me was in Cardiff by the Sea, which is a little community on the ocean just north of San Diego. And what they had and what they provided was such an in-depth experience with families. They invited families in, the families, I mean, we visited the school and we were there a day. There were families running all over. I mean, moms and dads and aunts and uncles and the kids, and that was really important. And that's why I started Together for Children, because we needed to have the families engaged. Parent-teacher conferences were always a big deal in my school, and I was always proud that we got 100% participation. Now, I had to go pick up some parents, you know, drive them to school, but we didn't let go of that until they were all there. So we were really concerned when these families couldn't speak English, but we provided interpreters, and we continued to get nearly every family and parent at parent-teacher conferences. So we visited California and modeled some of our ELL work and then our dual language program. We now have a very successful dual language program in one of our elementary buildings. And it's been a tremendous program. Initially, I think the goal was to have 50% English speakers and 50% Spanish speakers. We don't offer dual language in languages other than Spanish and English. I wish we could, but we just don't quite have the numbers to do that. But the dual language program was an outgrowth of that trip that we had taken to California. Language is a major, major issue to overcome, and it continues to be today.
I was thinking here as we were talking, a couple other things that initially was very difficult for our families was the weather. I mean, the cold weather, you know, and how you dress. And I can remember the first time it snowed and taking the kids outside and, okay, this is how you make a snow angel. And but not understanding you can't send your, you know, child walking when it's 30 below. But then to a lot of the families, 40 was freezing. So, you know, that adjustment. And another big adjustment was the food. Getting them used to the food that we served in our school and different things like that. So those are, I'll probably keep butting in here, but those are things that just kept coming to mind as we were sitting here talking. So
a challenge as I'm listening to this. I mean, it just brings up memory. We can have like Old Home Week here talking about stuff. But Audrey's talking about as the first ELL teacher, you know, and going to families' homes and provide help with things. And so my congregation, which is Grace Lutheran, we began to see this need, and how could we support our teachers? How could we support our medical people and provide support for these families? So conversations began in 1994 between our congregation, the Nebraska Synod, and actually the big church, the ELCA, of which I'm a part. And we came up with a partnership and developed what we called the Welcome Center, and hired a director from Texas. She came up here with her son and worked with us for 4 years, but provided those very kinds of things. How do I get my child immunized? I need a translator to go to the dentist. I need coats. I need whatever need you could think of to help bridge that cultural change. That's what this person did. And so that was the Welcome Center that we talked about for about 20 years. I was a part of that board, and it evolved over time. Liz got a call to a church in Omaha, and so now we're working with the Presbyterians, which was fabulous. And then he was an elder gentleman, and so he brought in a mentee, and he was part of the Missouri Synod Church. And so now we were training Abel. And so this transition and this liaison kind of work went on. And then as families became established, they had connections. We saw the need wasn't as huge for that, but what was really needed was legal immigration support. And so our transition then became, in 2005, we began those conversations with Lutheran Family Services and the agencies in town, and then developed the Welcome Center. And we secured an AmeriCorps volunteer, and she was able to get training as a BIA immigration specialist, which meant she could work on immigration issues once she was certified at different levels, similar to what an immigration attorney would do, but it was reliable immigration help and legal immigration help. And I was tallying up, I kept a timeline of what we did each year. And in the 10 years that she worked with us, we were able to serve over 3,700 people with immigration issues. Because if you don't know it, study the immigration system, it's broken. And so we know there's a lot of things that need to be fixed with that. But that may be an issue that your community encounters. And if you can tackle that issue headlong, it's going to bring stability to your community and to your families. It's only a win-win. So that was one of the things. Yes?
I just have a question. Several of the conversations that I had with people from Lexington talked about people moving in who really didn't need to know how to take care of a house. They didn't know how to run a microwave. They didn't know how to cook in an oven. They didn't drive. They didn't know how. They didn't have a bank account. So who kind of coordinated that sort of thing?
Well, that was the initial focus of the Welcome Center that I talked about. I mean, there were other agencies doing that kind of work too, but that was one of the big gaps that we saw, and with Liz and then the directors after that, we tried to fill that. But that need was, Maria, you probably can speak to that.
And it was also so many of our, I mean, not initially the first year, but our young students were interpreting for their parents. So, I mean, they would go to the bank and, you know, how would you like your 10-year-old to be explaining to you what they're talking about for a loan? I mean, our kids learned so quick, but they were assuming so much of that responsibility to help their parents out.
To interpret for the parents at the bank or even at the doctor's office.
Doctor's office. I was going to say that was.
Well, my first years when I arrived in 1992, I didn't work for, I think, 2 years. And then I started to work for Parent-Child Center. Parent-Child Center is a domestic violence agency, and at the same time we have the child abuse prevention. So I was working as a one-to-one coordinator doing home visits. So I did a lot of that teaching. I still remember, and I laughed, these families, they were telling me, We bought a stove and it says self-clean, but we hadn't been able to find the hoses yet. So I go, keep looking for it. They didn't know, that you just put it on cleaning and it will burn everything. But they didn't know how to do it. So I did a lot of homework. I received a lot of phone calls the first years, asking, well, we don't know how to help the child to do a homework. Till we start having the programs, after school programs, so that, was taking care of that. I love everything that I had done. I love to help families. But my challenge, I can speak Spanish, but I don't speak Somali. And I remember in 1993, we have a lot of Vietnamese families. And, I didn't speak Vietnamese, but I found a Pictionary. And that was the way that I was communicating with them when they were having their child born and they didn't know what to do. Sometimes I remember they will come and say, Maria, I'm hungry. And I tease them and said, okay, let's go to McDonald's. No, fish. So, there's ways to help them. And right now, we have Google that is wonderful. At the hospital, every day, I work as an interpreter and translator, but I had seen every day we have like 6 or 7 different languages. We have Somali interpreters and Spanish-speaking interpreters, but we don't have Pashto, it's a new one. We don't have, there's 3 or 4, Arabic, Swahili. Every day we have different. So we use a program called Propio. So not, a lot of people, they don't like it because it's more easy to communicate with an interpreter than to do it to the iPad. But sometimes that's what we have to use.
I thought of another challenge that is ongoing for Lexington as well is our infrastructure was not prepared to handle the housing issues, so housing was a huge problem. To this day, I think there's long-term residencies at motels on the Parkway until we can get them into houses. Childcare, you have different shifts, and I think Pastor was saying this would be maybe not 3 shifts like Tyson IBP was running, but if the parents are working hours and can't get the kids from school or whatever, who's watching those kids? And a lot of the households, the kids, the 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds were watching the babies. And is that safe? To them it was okay. But it's still an issue. Childcare is an issue, housing's an issue. Some of those things you can try to identify in your own community of how prepared North Platte is going to be for that influx. And some of it will just have to be an ongoing transition for you.
I think another thing that we did was, of course, I initially in an elementary building, but just having our students and their families share their culture with the rest of the community, whether it was their ethnic food, or whether it was their dances. We started doing some things like that, and that just, it was a nice icebreaker, I could say, just to expose. I mean, we've got some talented kids, and I will say, initially, it was hard to get those kids involved in activities. It still is in some areas, but because their parents needed them to come home and watch the younger siblings so they could go to work. So they, I can come to practice Monday, but I can't, and so just getting kids involved in our activities. But, I love now watching our soccer team. I love our basketball team. We have one of our girls that wears a hijab out there, and she's proud of herself. And I'm going to brag, but we do have the best band in the state in Lexington, and it doesn't matter what language you speak. We're all playing that music. So when we got our first Afghani student last year, the kids were like, "Oh, we got to talk to him, Ahmed." And so of course he spoke Pashto. So Google Translate, they were immediately talking to him and just making him feel welcome. I was telling Jackie on the way up, we've gotten students from Micronesia this year, and there's nothing to translate with them because the United States I don't want to say owns the country, but you know what I'm saying, but they each little village they come from speaks a different dialect. So that has probably been our most frustrating when you can't communicate with them, but kids don't care. They're so welcoming, and I will say that's probably one of the best things that I see working in the school is that we don't care. You're welcome here. Just we're going to teach you, and they learn the different languages. Our Spanish honor students go take the literacy test in Spanish at UNK, and they get certification in that. Well, last year we had one of our Somali girls pass that test as well. So, I love the talent and what they can bring for our community.
Well, Audrey, you led us right into the next question. That was awesome. After 30 years with the packing plant in town, what do you see that Lexington has gained?
Oh, so much. And I hope this is beneficial. I just can't wait to hear what questions you have, if we're nailing this or if we're like way off. But we are better as a community because of our multicultural diversity, and we've all grown as people. We have grown as agencies and as a community together. We've learned through the processes, and there is a tremendous sense of pride because we've gained so much by working together and learning that things can happen with the right attitude and the right people around the table and the right questions being answered and deliberated. So we are better together as a community. I think that's why Lexington is thriving. Because we partner, the foundation is a partner with the Welcome Center, we're partners with the Parent-Child Center, we're partners in education. We work with the city for almost all of the development that goes on there. So it is just an all-inclusion. If you work together, things can happen, and it is about attitude.
And I would echo that. I think that's probably the biggest thing. We've all stuck together and worked together to continue to improve and make not only, I'm in the schools, our schools better, but our community better. One of the best things I love is when when new families register and they come up to the high school and they walk in the building and they see the flag of their country. It makes them feel like, you recognize us, you value where we've come from, and they'll cry, they want to get a picture of that, and I think probably the best thing is the friendships that I have gained from the many different students and the many parents that we may not have got along at times, but we've just, the respect that has developed between all of us. Still trying to get the State Department on board of, you got to give us time. These kids can't learn a language that fast. And probably at the high school, you have 4 years to graduate. Well, when we get a kid that comes in that's 17 and then has never been to school, and I got to get him out of here, and they were out a couple weeks ago, and I said, you know what? It's not important to me that I get him out at 18. If he has to stay another year, so he can understand and he's going to be a productive citizen, I'm much more for that. Now, I know I'll take a ding because I didn't get him out of here in the right time, but there is so much that we can learn and that we have learned.
Oh, there's so much we've gained, really. It's difficult just to say one thing, or even several. I've gotten to know people from all over the world that I wouldn't have gotten to know if I'd have been in Kearney or Holdridge. North Platte, you've had a pretty multicultural community for a long time. At least as we participated against you in sports, we'd see a lot of Latinos out there on the field and Black Americans, and that's really cool. I think the thing that's impressed me the most that I think Lexington has gained is the knowledge that we can do this. It's a hard thing, but it's a very rewarding thing. It just fills your bucket to be able to give back and to see the growth in individual children. It's amazing. You know, they come in and they don't speak anything, and you know, they leave and they're going on to UNK. UNK has been a tremendous partner for Lexington. They have really provided many of our students great opportunities, as have other schools in the state. But it's really rewarding to see a child come in and not speak English, and struggle and fight and work and come out and you know, 13 years later, they're going to UNK, or they're going to the university, or they're going to Northwestern, they're going to Stanford. You know, I mean, we've had kids very, very successful, and that's tremendous to see. So I think that's one of the great things that we've gained.
I think having this opportunity to come and speak to you about the positives, I mean, we're absolutely glad that our children are raised in Lexington, and the experience they had there, it prepared them in a whole nother way, coming from central Nebraska. Lexington took a lot of dings, publicity-wise. You probably saw a lot of things in the news. We still do, I think. I'm kind of oblivious to it because that's not my reality of who we are as a community. But what I did take was opportunities, because I was involved in different organizations, and especially the church. They would be curious about what's happening in Lexington. So I had opportunity to invite groups to come to Lexington. And because I was part of the school system, I could see the broad way that was impacting the community. I think the Lexington Schools has done a tremendous job. So to partner with your school system, to lead the way. But we would invite groups in, and then we would offer them, well, would you like to go to, you know, lunch with our kids? And we would have people, high school students, were going to sit in the lunchroom with high school students. And it was the most tremendous experience. They would come back from that. And I don't know if that's still happening, Audrey, but yeah, we have higher ed people that come in, students that are preparing to be teachers. I think Shadron used to come when I was there. I don't know who else, but that became part of their experience, and to meet our kids. And again, I can't say it enough, is to collaborate and communicate and not duplicate. So know what each other does as human service providers, work together. It's called synergy. When you bring those forces together, what you can do, it's just incredible how that multiplies. So that would be my advice.
I have to add to go along with that. Being at the high school, I love homecoming and prom. Not really, but the best thing is when all those kids get in there together, and we are playing all these different type of music, and our Hispanic kids are teaching our white kids, our Somali kids. It is so cool to see that, and that's why I've always said, I always say that movie, High School Musical, the song, we're all in this together. I keep telling our kids, that is our theme song, because that is who we are.
That's true. In Lexington right now, you get to see a lot of bilingual professional people. Mm-hmm. You know, we have a lot of them, as doctors, nurses, you name it. We have a lot. They went out to school, to college or universities, and came back to be in Lexington. So a lot of times we don't need that many interpreters. We still do. We hadn't seen yet a lot of the Somali community. Is still young, but I think pretty soon we will start seeing them too.
So, based on what you and your organization know now, 30 years later, what would you do differently on day one or in the planning stages where North Platte finds itself now? What would be your best advice for us, for where we are?
I think you're ahead of where Lexington was, and I wasn't in Lexington, so I can't really say. But just the fact that you've called us in and you're asking these questions about how to prepare is a good thing. what happens in North Platte is probably going to be different than Lexington, and there's elements of what you've learned today that you can take, but there's no way you're going to be able to anticipate all of the issues that come your way and that come to your community. But how you choose to respond to those as they reveal themselves, it matters. Take it head on and just say, okay, how do we make this work, or what can we do to make this situation better? This is how Lexington did it. It's not working for us, so what is going to work? You just are going to have to work together and embrace it, because it is so positive. It's a lot of work, and it will long term. It's going to reap some fantastic benefits. And as I read this question, I can't wait to see what her response to this is, because I think she'll have a lot of insight of how to prepare.
Jerry and I were just talking, I'm like, when you think back, I think we've done okay. But there's some things we could have done differently, but I just think the more you prepare, the more you talk about it in your communities, you get, your churches, your different organizations involved. I think that makes a difference. I know working together with law enforcement, making sure they're on a page, making sure, they have training. Everybody needs that. And it's just, I don't know, I just plan. Don't anticipate you're only going to get one family with 3 kids, because that isn't going to happen. But and go see other places, but you know your community best. And I think it's going to come from people in this community, and how you react, and how you step forward, and what you plan to do. We're excited for you.
Absolutely. Are there any cattlemen in our audience? Awesome. A cattleman family back there. You're going to really enjoy this experience, and I want to applaud your community for setting up a backup packing plant owned and operated by cattlemen. That is awesome, and I truly hope that you are successful. It'll be a lot of hard work. One thing that I would like to see, and we didn't get that in Lexington, I would like to see a member, a liaison from the beef packing plant, be a part of our administrative team. It could have been so helpful, I think, and it would still be helpful for the school to have a member of the packing plant, a liaison member, come to the school, or to the school administrative meetings and listen to our concerns, but also share the concerns they have for their employees. That's one thing that I think I wish we'd have been able to accomplish. We made some efforts, and we talked together, and in the beginning we visited packing plants in Kansas and in Dakota City. I flew up to, it was really cool because I flew on a private jet to Dakota City. A little boy from Myrna, Nebraska doesn't get that opportunity very often, but doing as much preparation as you possibly can. Because you're not going to just get a lot of white guys wanting to cut beef. So you are going to have a multicultural workforce. So be prepared for them. They're awesome, awesome families. They really are great people.
It also, we took our employees out to the plant, because I don't think people understand how hard of work those people do. And they only sit down for their lunch break. So that was an eye-opener to go to the plant and see what they actually do. One of the other elementary principals and myself started going out to Tyson over the lunch break, just to meet with parents, see our face, and we had, of course, we had an interpreter, but then, they were so much more comfortable because it was like we were in their territory. They felt comfortable, and I never left hungry because they were all buying me lunch, and they'd give up their seat, and I'm like, no, you sit down, you have to stand all day. But I think it's really important to get into those plants and see what those people do.
As a school employee, I think it's so important to do those home visits, and Audrey was awesome at that. But meeting the families in their home, I always told teachers that don't take silence as acceptance for what you're doing, because our minority families would almost never raise objections to anything. So you need to practice asking the questions. And you know, when you say, are you happy with what your child is learning? And they're always going to say yes. Sí, señor. Well, that's not always the case. So, you know, learn to do some probing and find out what the issues are. It's just really important. Meet them where they live.
I don't know that I have anything to add to that, and trying to reflect on that question, what would you do different? I think we learned from our mistakes. And so part of the time we had no idea what we were doing, or we did the best we thought would be the right thing. But also to involve. Don't have it all be us making the decisions. Do what you can to be in conversation, bring people in to help begin to make those decisions. We did things with leadership, trying to encourage people to, what's it called in Lexington? There's a leadership training that's done, what it used to be. Yeah. Leadership development, that sort of thing. On the light side with the Welcome Center, as a board, we thought, because we needed funds to collaborate with Lutheran Family Services and how this was all going to work. So we did a soup supper, and we all made the soup, and if we broke even, I have no idea. And not many people came. So I don't know that I would do that again. But that was the year before Give Big. And so then we became an affiliate fund of the Give Big, and our message was much broader. We had people, because Give Big is not just Lexington. We have people, participating online from all over if they've had a connection to Lexington. So that's one thing.
Well, I remember when I arrived, they gave me a packet, and I was trying to recall if it was the electricity company who gave it to us as a welcoming. And in the packet was, different information about the hospital or places to look for help. But that was 31 years ago. I don't know if they still do that or not. I have no. Yeah, I remember it was a packet. Yeah, with all the information in there. Yeah, how to register a child for school and the clinics and all that. So that was very helpful. But I like to be in Nebraska, so I love Nebraska, and I think we can make a big difference. I tell my kids, you want to go back to California? I said, no way. For vacation time, it's okay, but not to stay. They feel they're from Nebraska.
And I think right now, I know I think it was just last week, there was a meeting, because now we're getting so many Afghanistan people that right now, so see, we're still learning. We're still thinking, okay, how can we help this new culture that's moving to town? Because right now it's mainly the men that have come. We've got 3 at the high school. But how can we prepare to help them when they bring their families? I know our one young man, he says, I have 9 brothers and sisters still in Afghanistan. He wants them to get here. And so that is what we're working on now, helping these people. We're anticipating we'll probably get Ukraine people. So, it's just, we keep learning every day, and as was stated, we learn through our mistakes and what worked and what didn't work.
Right now we have a lot of people from Cuba too. Here already at the Walmart distribution center, but they just come and work and go back to Lex.
Last question. This one wasn't on the sheet. What would you like to share with us that hasn't been said yet? What do you want us to hear?
I'm going to cheat. I think it has been said. I think one of the greatest rewards is the efforts of the community. It pulled us together as a community, and we worked together well. But the fact that our kids, and the kids that we helped raise, and the ones that have gone through the system, have chosen to come back to Lexington to practice and to be the professionals, the teachers, and it speaks volumes. That is home to them. And my 4 children went through Lexington. We opted in. We also are by Johnson Lake Elwood and got to choose which school district to send the kids. And I remember when we opted them into Lexington, my friends in the area would say, "You chose Lexington." And I said, "Yes, we did." And they have the most amazing education. They went on to college more prepared than I or my husband, who had gone to a college prep high school. Lexington had prepared them beyond academic ways. You know, they prepared them for life and for being able to see a bigger picture of the world. And they're better people for it. So I'm just pleasantly surprised by the rewards that keep coming. The other side of it too is they come in, a lot of the refugees and immigrants will come to North Platte because of the meat plaque and because they have a job there. But they have skills besides cutting beef. And so eventually, as they feel more a part of the community, they break out into entrepreneur roles. We have some of the greatest restaurants and concrete layers and brick layers, and so it does contribute to your whole economic environment beyond just having employees at a meat pack.
I would say as an educator, it's, I probably have never had to work so hard, but it's been the most rewarding when I see what those kids, when I have their kids now, what they have become. And so, and then I also, another thing, and I'm talking from the educational side, I can remember there were times where our kids, I can remember going to a game in another town and they would throw tortillas on the floor. And another time, you know, green cards were thrown. It's just, but our student body, instead of, whoa, they stood up for each other. And that was the most important thing to see.
People are just amazing. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're brown, white, yellow, green. People are amazing. And one thing I always told my teachers, I said, have an open heart, an open mind, listen intently, and speak briefly. There's so much we can learn and gain if we'll have that open mind and an open heart. It's tremendous. One of the things, I always open my day with the phrase from Micah. No one knew it was from Micah, but the kids at my school always heard that. What's the phrase? I forgot.
Love kindness.
Love kindness, walk humbly, and do justice. And that's the key, you know. Just be an open individual and open to learning. There's so much to be gained by knowing people from other places and opening your home to them, opening your heart to them. It's just, there's no loss. It's all gain.
I would, because I come out of a faith basis, I mean, that's what drives me, what influenced me, and my core is to show the neighbor ethic and to radical hospitality, whatever form that might take. So that's why I was engaged in the activities I was engaged in. and a privilege to work in the school system because I got to witness a lot of what Audrey is talking about firsthand. But the other part of that is the real gift to me as a fourth-generation immigrant was to be reminded of my own immigrant story. And I stand on the shoulders of people who did really hard things when they came and settled Nebraska. And so it reminded me of that, folks are going to, you can't take away all the hard, but you work to remove as many barriers as you can. And it's hard, it is hard work, but you can do it. And I was reminded, this is so odd, I was telling Chris, we have another roommate that I went to see. She's also a retired school librarian. But so the first thing I walk in and she says, Mary, have you seen this new book? Some friend of hers. And you people from North Platte probably know it. So I took a picture of the cover. It's The Canteen. It's one of the many books that's been written about that. So you're a community that has done a hard thing. That started in December of 1941 and went through, I think it was May or April of 1945, every day. And those trains came in, I forget how many a day, was it 8? And they were here for 10 minutes, according to this book. And so to remind yourself of that story and the welcome, and this was during the war, and so there was rationing going on. And so communities from all around this area were involved in this effort. There was a speed limit. So if it was your day and you had 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, you had to get up at the dawn 30 to pack that vehicle as full as you could with as many people as you could because gas was rationed. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting because I was working on sharing what I was going to share with you. And I just thought, North Platte, you have an amazing history. You've done hard things. So.
Well, what can I say? Well, as a migrant person, it's hard. I was thinking the other day, I was telling my husband, I said, it's hard that you leave everything without knowing what you're gonna receive or what to expect. But I was thinking about the Cubans because I was telling my husband, we are as a Mexican, we can go in and out, documented or undocumented to Mexico. But the people from Cuba, when they leave their country, they leave it forever. Because they're surrounded by water. There's no way that they can go back undocumented. So I said, it's harder for them. I said, as Mexican, I think it's hard to come undocumented, but I was thinking about the Cubans, that it's harder for them. And for many other ones, you know how much money the coyotes make just to bring people over. And it's hard, it's the restart. A lot of families leave everything that they have, thinking they will have the American dream. So we need to receive and, with a smile, open doors. And you feel welcoming when somebody smiles to you.
One of the things I shared with you, I know, was that I had conversations with many people from Lexington, one of which was the mayor. He said something very simple but very profound, I thought. He said, we just need to remember to look at the similarities, not the differences. And I thought, so cool. Yeah. So, of course, our hope and prayer is that North Platte, I know there's a lot of conversations going on about the beef packing plant coming, and our hope and prayer is that we can all work together in our community like Lexington has. And we, as a faith community, are ready to help in any way we can. So, thank you so much for coming. Please stay and have coffee and cookies with us and take that opportunity to visit with these wonderful panel members, and please thank them again.
We applaud you. It's awesome that you've taken the time to come out on such a beautiful Sunday afternoon. So
Thank you.
We applaud you.
Ask the questions that you have in your minds, though, as we mingle here a little bit. If we haven't addressed some things that are heavy on your minds, please approach us, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you for having us.
I'm with the North Platte Telegraph. I want to make sure I get your name spelled right. I guess you've got them written all over.
Yeah, she has them.
Oh, I guess I could read them on my photograph too. This is so much different than I anticipated. Me too.
Way different? What were you anticipating?
I don't even know.
You know, you know, the process we were talking on the way here, there's going to be issues, you know, there's going to be issues that you never perceive. There's going to be laws broken because they don't know them, you know, and it's how you deal with them. And that's,
I want to do